Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know what we're talking about today.
Making money work for us.
Right. Instead of us,
You know.
absolutely for it. And we actually have a really interesting source for this one. This is from a piece by a 27-year-old who actually managed to retire early
Wow.
using these strategies.
At 27.
Yeah, amazing. We're going to dive into his story a little bit, but also look at the 5 methods he used, because I think even if, early retirement might not be everyone's goal,
Right.
the underlying principles here of
Absolutely.
making your money work for you
Yeah.
are really, really valuable.
It's about financial freedom at any age.
Exactly. So, okay,
Yeah.
method number 1. On this path to financial freedom, something that I think will be very familiar to most of our listeners, bank products.
Right. The traditional route, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
The low-risk options. Fixed deposits, savings accounts. I think most people are familiar with those. It's kind of like as our source points out, though, there's a trade-off.
Right.
These products, they offer a lot of stability. They're very predictable, which can be really important, actually, for some investors, especially as you get closer to retirement age. But the returns
Yeah.
are often quite low.
And by low, we're talking.
Well, he specifically mentions returns ranging from like 1% to 5% annually.
Which, depending on where you are in the world, that might not even
Right. Depends on the country.
keep up with inflation.
Exactly.
You're not really growing your wealth. You're just kind of
Maintaining it.
maintaining it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the point he makes in this piece, right? It might be suitable for some folks, particularly those with maybe a lower risk tolerance, or who are really looking to preserve the capital they already have.
Right.
But for anyone seeking like more aggressive growth, or early retirement, like in this case, this is probably not going to be the most effective tool.
Want the fast track to sipping lemonade on a beach?
Probably not.
Right.
But every financial journey needs a good foundation.
Okay.
And these products can definitely provide that stable base on which you can build other potentially higher growth investments.
That makes sense. So bank products, the reliable old car of the financial world, gets you from A to B.
I like that.
The source then dives into something a little
A
bit
little more exciting.
more exciting.
Yeah.
Real estate. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, real estate has always been a popular avenue, I think, for building wealth. And for good reason.
Right.
The potential for generating passive income through rental properties,
Absolutely.
combined with the fact that property values tend to appreciate over time, can be quite attractive.
But I imagine there are also some downsides. It's not all sunshine and beachfront properties.
Of course not.
Right.
There are definitely some downsides. I think one of the biggest hurdles with real estate is just the significant upfront capital required.
Okay.
It's not an investment for the faint of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And as our source points out, even when you look at something like rental income, which seems like a great way to make your money work for you, you have to factor in things like mortgage interest payments. Right?
Right, because the bank is also
The bank is getting a cut.
getting a cut of that passive income stream that
Exactly.
you're generating.
It's an important point that's often overlooked.
Mm.
And then, of course, there's just the inherent risk of property market fluctuations, unexpected maintenance costs,
Right.
difficult tenants. It's not always.
Yeah, it might not be as passive as it seems.
Exactly. Not as passive as it might seem at first glance.
Okay. So real estate, while potentially lucrative, comes with its fair share of complexities and risks.
Absolutely.
Now, this is where I think things start to get particularly interesting
Okay.
for our listeners.
Yeah.
The source then talks about starting a small business
Okay.
as a path to passive income.
Interesting. What are your initial thoughts on that one?
Well, I think what's fascinating here is how he kind of demystifies the idea of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people, they shy away from starting a business because they think,
Right.
oh, I need to have some groundbreaking Google-sized idea.
Right.
Right? And while those are fantastic,
Those are great.
it's definitely not the only path to entrepreneurial success.
Not at all.
And he uses an example that I think really highlights this,
Okay.
which is vending machines.
Vending machines. Okay.
I know it sounds a little underwhelming at first, but hear me out.
Vending machines. It's funny because when you think about it, they're everywhere, but we never really think about them as like,
Right. Oh,
business opportunities.
spexy.
Yeah, exactly. Not a sexy business.
Mhm.
But they're low maintenance. They're scalable. in the sense that you could start with one and then gradually grow your network. And they require very minimal day-to-day involvement once you have them set up in strategic locations.
Mm.
You're not having to show up in an office every day.
Right, you're not, yeah.
You're not managing a team. You're not...
You're not creating the next social media app, but you are tapping into a
Exact.
consistent need.
You're providing a service that people need.
Right. People are always going to need a quick snack or drink.
Right. It's a simple business model, but he emphasizes that it's about identifying that simple, repeatable model
Right.
that can generate income with minimal ongoing effort from you. He even uses the example of Warren Buffett.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett,
Right.
who started his entrepreneurial journey with a single pinball machine
See, if Warren Buffett
back in the day.
started small,
Exactly.
there you go.
It kind of takes the pressure off needing to have it all figured out from day one. Right?
Absolutely.
The key takeaway here, I think, is that this idea of passive income through entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
it is attainable.
Right.
Even if you're not starting with some revolutionary idea or millions in venture capital, right?
Yeah.
It's about
Mhm.
identifying a need, providing a solution,
Yeah.
and then structuring the business model in a way that minimizes your active involvement over time.
Okay. I like that. So we've covered bank products, we've covered real estate, we've covered starting a small business. What's next?
So our source then goes into the world of investing,
Okay.
specifically stocks.
Okay.
And I know this might seem
This is where people get a little...
intimidating at first.
Yeah.
But he makes the point that the basic concept is actually really straightforward.
Okay.
When you buy a stock, you're essentially buying a tiny piece of ownership in that company.
Right. You're not just buying the share, you're buying
You're buying a stake
a stake
in that company's success.
in their success, right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of our listeners, even if they're comfortable, dabbling in other forms of investment, might be a little hesitant
Right.
about stocks. It can seem
True.
kind of risky.
Yeah, and there's definitely risk involved with
Right.
any investment, right?
Yeah.
But he really highlights two key ways you can actually benefit from owning stocks.
Okay.
One is dividends. So dividends are basically like regular payouts to shareholders. A share of the company's profits, essentially.
Okay, so it's almost like you're getting a little bonus payment
Exactly.
just for being a part owner.
Yeah, just for being a shareholder.
Okay,
You're entitled to a portion of the company's earnings.
that makes sense.
And then the second way is through stock appreciation. So this is when the value of your shares actually increases over time.
Okay. So you could potentially earn in two ways then. You've got those regular dividend payments,
That's right.
and then you've got that rising value of the stock itself.
And that's the thing about investing in companies that are growing and profitable
Okay.
over time.
Now he does mention that you don't need a fortune to get started.
This is what's great about it.
Right.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
says you can start investing in stocks with as little as $50.
Which I think is so important
Right.
because it makes it accessible. He gives a really compelling example with Apple. Imagine you had invested just $50 in Apple shares maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That initial investment would be worth significantly more today.
Right.
And that's not even considering any dividends they might have paid out during that time.
Wow. See, and that's a great illustration of how even these small, consistent investments
Yes.
can grow exponentially over time.
Absolutely.
Especially if you choose
If you're making smart choices.
right, if you choose the right companies.
Exactly.
Because not all stocks are created equal, we should say.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to the method that our source really credits with his own early retirement,
Okay.
which is ETFs, exchange-traded funds. This is where he seemed to really hit his stride.
This is the one I've been the most curious about, to be honest, because it does sound
It's a mouthful.
a little bit more complex
I can seem a little more complex.
than the others.
Sure.
So break it down for me. What are ETFs? What makes them different from just buying regular stocks?
So imagine like a curated basket of stocks. Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket with a single company, or even trying to become like a stock expert yourself and picking individual stocks, you're investing in this diversified collection that's managed by people who, this is what they do.
So it's like having a personal investment team, but without the expensive fees and having to make small talk with them.
Exactly, exactly. And ETFs, they typically aim to like track a particular market sector. So it could be something like technology or healthcare, or even a specific investment strategy, like maybe you're interested in growth stocks or value investing. There's an ETF for pretty much everything these days.
And actually, he specifically mentions the VGT, which focuses on information technology companies.
And that one's had a good run, right?
That's the one he attributes a lot of his success to. So I was like, okay, let's
Yeah.
Let's dive into that a little bit. And I think it makes sense because if you look at
It's grown over 250% in recent years, and I think, a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's composed of these,
these companies that are just
really rapidly
really
expand.
glowing up right now.
But I think beyond the returns, what's key with ETFs, and VDT is a great example of this, is the built-in diversification, right? So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to bet on this one tech company and hope for the best, you're spreading your investment across a whole bunch of companies in that sector.
Which reduces your risk.
Exactly. It reduces your risk significantly.
So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
And you're kind of benefiting from the wisdom, I guess,
Expertise, yeah.
of whoever put together the ETF in the first place.
Right.
So it's almost like this hands-off approach
In a way.
to being able to play the stock market.
You're still in the market, but you're not having to be,
You're watching it every day.
Exactly. You're not having to.
Yeah.
And another advantage, too, that he highlights is that ETFs are constantly being, rebalanced and updated.
Okay.
So as companies, some companies are going to grow, some companies are going to stumble. The ETF automatically adjusts. It's part of how they're managed. They'll add new high performers. They'll take out the laggards. You literally don't have to do anything.
You don't have to constantly be like, oh, should I sell this? Should I buy that? You're letting the experts.
Exactly. Now it's important to do your own research.
Of course.
You want to understand, what are the underlying holdings of any ETF that you're considering investing in?
Right.
But it does take a lot of that day-to-day.
That emotional labor.
Yeah, the emotional labor out of it.
Out of investing.
And it can make it a lot more approachable, especially for folks who are just starting out.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, with ETFs, you're essentially outsourcing the stock picking and the market watching to the experts
In a way,
while still having control.
you still have control over your strategy.
Right. By choosing which ETF
Yes.
aligns with,
What's important to you?
my goals and my risk tolerance.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay. So, obviously no investment is without risk.
Of course.
We should say that.
ETFs are no exception. You always want to be
Right.
mindful of that.
But it is really interesting. And I think what we can take away from this 27-year-old story is there's no magic bullet.
Right. There's no one size fits all.
There's no one size fits all, but
You got to find what works for you.
you've got to be proactive. You've got to explore different avenues, and you got to figure out what works for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what worked for him might not work for everybody.
Right.
But I think the key takeaway here is that, passive income,
It is possible.
it's possible.
Right.
It's not a myth. It takes work. It takes some planning. It may take some trial and error, but
You can design a life where your money is working as hard as you are.
absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, I'm really curious to hear what resonated most with all of you listening today. Of the 5 methods that we discussed, which one kind of sparked your interest and why?
Yeah.
Let us know.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, keep those wheels turning because, like you said, the most important step is the first one. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deeper.